In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the knock sensor on your Honda Pilot. Let's get started. Using a 10mm wrench, loosen the negative terminal and remove the negative battery cable. Tuck this down to the side. Remove the plastic engine cover. Using a flat blade screwdriver, we're going to loosen the clamp. Pull the hose assembly out of the intake. Using a 10mm socket, loosen the clamp. Using an 8mm socket, remove the 4 bolts for the air box. Moving to the back side of the box, there will be 2 more. With all 4 bolts loose, we're going to lift up and remove the intake, pull it off of the throttle body. Using a 12mm socket, we're going to remove the 2 nuts and 2 bolts for the throttle body. We're going to pull the throttle body off the intake. There's a push button connector. Push on this top button and pull it off. On the bottom, there's a clamp. Pinch this clamp. Slide it down and then pull the hose off. And we'll leave this with the intake. Pinch the clamp, slide it back. Pull the hose off of the intake. I'm going to tuck it up behind here, out of the way. Remove the connector off the side of the intake. There's a push button on the bottom. Push on that button, remove the connector. Pinch the clamp, pull it down. Remove the hose. We're going to leave this on the valve cover. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to go around and remove all of the bolts off of this top cover. All of the bolts are the same size, so you don't need to worry about where they went. We're going to go around our cover using a flat blade screwdriver, and there's these little ears around the outside. Our cover is RTV'd down, so we're going to go around and break the sealer all the way around the cover. You want to do this very gently. You don't want to crack the cover or damage any sealing surfaces. Remove the cover. Remove the gasket. We're only going to remove the 12mm nuts and bolts. Get them all loosened with a ratchet before using a power tool. Remove all of the nuts and bolts. Lift straight up and remove the intake manifold. Remove the intake gasket. Remove the spacer and remove the bottom gasket. Using clean rags, we're going to plug all of the holes that are leading down into the engine. This is so while we're working, we don't drop anything down there, and also while we're cleaning, we don't drop any crud down there. Using a light abrasive on a piece of wood, we'll use this sanding block to sand down the top of this and get rid of any of this black stuff, any corrosion. We don't want to take away any of the metal, just the extras. While you're sanding, you always want to push the dirt away from these cavities. Do not scrape into them. We're going to take our spacer and we're going to clean both sides using our sanding block. When you're done cleaning, it should look something like this. Remove all of the rags. We'll clean up this area just a tad more, and then we'll be ready to put our gasket in. Before assembling everything, we'll use a clean rag and some parts cleaner. We're going to wipe down all of our mating surfaces. We're going to do this on the spacer as well. We're going to use a piece of cardboard with 2 holes in the side to cover up our intake. We're going to cut this to size, but we'll put this down so we don't drop anything into the motor while we're working around it. Remove the connectors from the injectors. There's push buttons on either side. Push on both of these and pull straight up. Remove the plastic stay out of the rail. You can use a trim tool. We'll do the same thing on the front injectors. We're also going to pull these plastic stays out. You can use the trim tool or you can use a pair of pliers. Squeeze on either side and pull the clip out. When we squeeze on either side, we're squeezing these 2 tabs together so that it can fit through the bracket. I'm going to pull this harness back out of the way. Using an 8mm socket, we're going to remove the 2 bolts out of each rail. That's one. Go ahead and remove all 4 of them. Using a 12mm socket, remove the nut for the gas line bracket. Using a flat blade screwdriver, we're going to open up the bracket in the back that is holding the fuel line. You want to open this bracket enough that you have enough wiggle room to get this bracket off of the stud. And you can leave it in there around the line, or you can pull it out. We're going to pull the fuel rail up and out. You want to pull these straight out. It can be very tight, so take your time. Pop the injector rail out. We're going to put this to the side. We're going to remove our cardboard. We're going to be going after this intake runner. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to remove the bolt for the bracket. Remove the bolt. And our bracket's nice and wobbly. Remove the connector for the knock sensor harness extension. I'm going to pull this bracket up slightly. Using a pair of long 45-degree needle nose pliers, I'm going to remove the connector off of the knock sensor. Then I'm going to pull the harness extension with the bracket out. Using a 12mm socket, we're going to remove the 5 bolts for this lower intake. Remove the bolt. The 5th bolt is located right under here. Using a 12mm socket, go ahead and remove that bolt. We're going to remove the lower intake. Pull it up out of the way. Using a 24mm socket, remove the knock sensor. Remove the sensor. Our top plastic piece is broken off. There should be a little more here, but that's the base. Install the new sensor. Get it started by hand. Snug it down. Torque the knock sensor to 23 foot-pounds. We're going to remove the gasket. We'll be swapping this out. When you remove this, we recommend replacing the gasket. Using a light abrasive or a razor blade, go around and clean the mating surface for the gasket. When you're cleaning, you don't want to get anything inside of these ports. You can stuff these with rags, so you make sure that you don't get anything inside of here. We're going to go through and clean the mating surface on this lower intake piece. Do the same thing you did for the other mating surface. Once you have both mating surfaces clean, take a clean rag and some brake cleaner and wipe the surfaces of both. Get any oil, dirt, dust, anything that might mess up the sealing off of the mating surfaces. Do it on the corresponding piece as well. Install the gasket. Install the lower intake. I'm going to get the two middle nuts started. Get the two bolts on this side started as well. And get the bolt on this side started as well. Go around and snug all of the bolts down. Just get these snug for now. We'll go around and torque them after. We're going to torque down the lower intake. We're going to do this in 3 steps. Our first step is going to be 8 foot-pounds, our second step will be 12 foot-pounds, and then our final step will be 16 foot-pounds. As we do this, we're going to torque the bolts in a scattered manner. We're going to start with the middle two. If you can't fit a torque wrench in here, do the best you can. And our last one will be the one that's tucked up under behind. And we'll repeat that same process at 12 foot-pounds now. On to our final step, torque all the bolts to 16 foot-pounds. We're going to install the harness into the car. Lift up this plastic. You're going to fish this metal bracket under it. Get that into place. Using a pair of long pliers, we're going to reach down and grab the end of our connector. Get the connector lined up with the sensor, push it down into place. Make sure it clicks into place. You can pull on it and make sure it won't come out. When using pliers around these connectors, be very gentle. They can be very brittle. They're sitting in a high temperature area. We're going to put a piece of electrical tape in our socket while we do this bracket bolt. This will hold our bolt there so it won't fall out on us. Get the bolt lined up and started. Snug the bolt down. Install the connector for the knock sensor harness extender. Install the fuel rail, line all the injectors up and push straight down. Install the bolts for the fuel rails. Once you have both bolts installed, snug them down. Do the same thing on the other side. Snug the bolts down. And install the connectors. Install the plastic stay into the fuel rail bracket and install the injector connectors in the front as well. Install the plastic stays into the brackets. Install the gasket. Install the riser. Install the second gasket. Using a light abrasive or a razor blade, go through and clean the mating surface on the bottom of the intake manifold. When you're done cleaning, flip it over and clean the top half as well, using the same procedure. When you're cleaning, try not to push any debris into these ports. Try to scrape everything off of the side. If you'd like, you can stuff rags into these ports so you can make sure nothing gets in. Using brake parts cleaner and a clean rag, we're going to wipe our mating surface and get any dust, oil, or anything else off of it. With that nice and clean, we can drop the intake manifold onto the car. Install the nuts onto the studs. Get all the bolts started by hand. Go around and snug all of the nuts and bolts down until they touch the cover. We're going to torque the intake manifold in 3 steps. The first step is getting the bolts to touch the cover. The second step will be 8 foot-pounds, and the final step will be 16 foot-pounds. Follow as I go. There is a sequence. Going in the same order, torque the bolts to 16 foot-pounds for our final pass. We're going to clean our last piece. We're going to go around and clean the mating surface around this top cover using a razor blade or a light abrasive. Using a clean rag and some parts cleaner, we're going to clean this mating surface. Just wipe away any dust, dirt, or oil. We're going to wipe our mating surface on the top of our intake manifold one more time just to get rid of any dust, dirt, or oil. You can use some parts cleaner. Install the gasket and install the cover. Get all the bolts started by hand. Snug down all the bolts until they touch the cover, but don't make them tight. With all of the bolts touching the cover, we're going to go around and torque them to 4 foot-pounds, and then in our final step, we'll torque them to 8.8 foot-pounds. Now in our final step, bring all the bolts to 8.8 foot-pounds. Install the throttle body. Get the nuts started. Snug all the bolts down. Torque the throttle body bolts to 16 foot-pounds. Go in a cross pattern. Install the connector. Push until you hear a click. If you don't hear a click, give it a pull. Make sure it's locked on. And we'll put the vacuum hose on the bottom. Grab a pair of pliers, pinch the clamp, and slide it back into place. Install the connector. Install the vacuum hose onto the back of the intake manifold. Pinch the clamp, slide it back to its original position. Install the vacuum hose onto the side of the intake manifold. Pinch the clamp, put it back into its original position. Install the intake onto the throttle body. Install the hose assembly. Snug down the clamps. Tighten the bolts for the air box. Install the engine cover. Install the negative battery cable. Tighten the terminal down. And you're good to go.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.